Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Reconvene Sessions. My name is Alex Gallinari. I am a brand and community marketing manager at Eventbrite, and I'll be your host today, coming to you live from my home in Oakland, California. For those of you who are new to Reconvene Sessions, this is Eventbrite's ongoing event series covering the latest and greatest from the world of event creators. These events are meant to empower creators to share experiences, building and hosting events, while also passing along useful strategies for your events and businesses. I'll do a really quick overview of our new setup here. So you have our chat thread on the right, and everyone should be able to join in on the conversation there. And below the live video and my giant head, you'll see an overview of today's event and information on our speakers. So if you wish to connect with them, you'll find their links to all of their social profiles there. Next to that overview tab, you'll see a tab for questions. This is where you can pop in anything you'd like to ask our speakers throughout the event today, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can. And then you'll see a third tab for our survey. You know, we always appreciate feedback on Reconvene Sessions because it's our goal to make these as useful for you as possible. So just take literally a minute or two to share your thoughts with us before you head out. And now to get us started, I have a prompt for those of you who are already in the chat. And that question is, what is the ideal number of attendees you would like to have at your event? I know that events come in all different sizes, and it'd be interesting to see, where everyone in the room is at. All right, so overview of today's topic. Today's session is all about these event-going communities and how you can grow them. We're going to hear from three really unique event creators who have built their communities from the ground up, literally going from 0 attendees to hundreds, thousands, and even into the millions online and around the globe. Cultivating a sense of belonging among attendees at your events and also online is key to selling more tickets and driving word of mouth. So these three creators will share their stories and strategies in hopes of giving you the tools that you need to grow your community. So let's take a look at what we have in store for the next hour. First up, we'll chat with the fitness marshal himself, Caleb Marshall. Caleb is an internet sensation with millions of followers online, and he will talk about the role that consistency has played in building his community. Then we'll hear from Larissa May, who is the founder of Half the Story and one of last year's Reconvene Accelerator winners. Larz is a digital well-being pioneer, and she'll share with us how she is building community offline for the next generation. And then finally, we'll hear from Myron, the founder of Afro Soca Love. Myron will chat with us about how he went from a traveling DJ to an event producer and host, bringing thousands of people together across the globe through a shared passion. And we're beyond excited to have our speakers actually in the chat with you today. So feel free to ask them questions during the presentation, and they'll do their best to jump in and answer you live. And then at the end, we're bringing everybody onto our virtual stage for a live Q&A. So definitely stick around. You're not going to want to miss that. And while we have these three speakers on our virtual stage, I just want to remind us that there's also a wealth of knowledge in this chat right now. So I encourage you to connect and share ideas throughout today's event. All right, one last thing before we get started. Just want to make sure that we're set up for success. We are a community of creators, and we strive to create community for others through events. And we really want to model what community looks like. So let's encourage one another, let's be curious, and let's be grounded in the spirit of learning. The chat will be monitored. Harassment of any kind will not be tolerated. And also, a full recording of today's session will be posted with closed captions after the event on Eventbrite's YouTube channel. And of course, if you're sharing anything from today's session, let's use the hashtag Reconvene and we'll share the love on Eventbrite's channels. All right, that is my spiel. Let's get into it. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Caleb Marshall. Caleb's journey began in college when he signed up for fitness dance classes, and it became a passion and a way for him to relieve stress and anxiety. And then he took that passion and turned it into a full-fledged business consisting of YouTube videos where he has over 4 million subscribers, fitness concerts, live stream subscriptions, and more. And Caleb has really created a brand and community that celebrates everyone, no matter what size, shape, background, gender identity, or sexual orientation. It is a safe space for everyone to get into fitness. And he's here to talk about how he built that community from the ground up. So please join me in welcoming Caleb Marshall. Caleb, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to see you. How are you doing?
Doing great, doing great. I've got my coffee here. It's sent in a mug that was made by a fan, which is really cute. So I'm a little over caffeinated though, so I'm gonna try to slow down my words and decompress.
We'll do it together because I'm with you.
Is that? Is that tea?
It is tea. It's a nice Earl Grey.
Ooh, Earl. Okay, interesting. I usually don't have many tea drinker friends, so this is nice for me. I'm branching out.
There you go. You're welcome. I gave a little spiel about your background, but I would love to hear it in your own words. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are the fitness marshal.
People call me the modern day Richard Simmons. I tell people I am the love child of Britney Spears and Richard Simmons. I just have a lot of fun dancing and making people feel good. It's something that has gotten me through so many hard times. It's really helped my mental health, my physical health, and I am now just finding a passion in life by bringing other people joy and healing and showing them that working out can be something really exciting and fun and entertaining.
I love that. And that passion has now grown into a full-fledged business with millions of followers across platforms. It really is incredible to see. And your videos are just beyond captivating. It's really, you do some incredible work. And I want for a second to jump back to the before times, before any of that stuff was happening, before you were big on YouTube. And I wanted to ask, what would you say the building blocks were as you were building that community and keeping them coming back for more? What were the building blocks that allowed that to happen?
It was really organically built out of passion. I worked on my craft for 4 or 5 years before ever starting a YouTube channel. I found something that I was really good at, I was really passionate about, and then it just became about scaling it and finding out how I can distribute it to as many people as possible. So I think in the beginning it was working with friends, being very scrappy, being very resourceful. I didn't have a budget or money, so I used friends' camera equipment or like my college's camera equipment. I begged my friends to come and be in a video for no pay, but I was like, I'll tag you on YouTube, even though I have no followers. And it was just finding a really good group of people around me that were supportive, encouraging, and helped me live my passion before it was profitable.
Yeah. So that idea of first off, authenticity. You did something that was true to yourself, and I think that comes through loud and clear. When people see the content that you're putting out, and talk about partnering a little bit with your friends and family and the people around you, and being scrappy about getting a little bit of a team to help you with this work. And I'm curious if there were any things as you started, distributing content for the first time, that you thought of to really make sure that people knew who you were and knew what they could expect from you.
In the beginning, I was really interested in making something that was really recognizable, and I knew that whatever I picked would follow me for the rest of my life. I mean, when you create a brand, the world will remember that, and so it's not easy to change a name or an offering. And so I wanted to start very simple and bare bones, and then build up from there as I grew. So in the beginning, I knew I loved to dance, so I wanted to create a 3-minute video set to one song I didn't really want an intro or an outro. I wanted people to be able to jump into it. I wanted it to reach as many people as possible. So, like in my classes at home, I taught all ages, all sizes, all dance abilities. And my grandma was actually the one who came to my classes in the very beginning.
Love
And
that.
so I had to make sure all my dances could be something my grandma could do and my like trained dancer friends could do. So I knew who I was reaching, and then I had me and my two backup dancers in frame. It was a very clear triangle look, and now and I threw on camo pants and called myself the fitness marshal. And so every time they find a video, they go, "Oh, there's the guy in the camo pants with the two girls in the back," and that just became a very recognizable thing that I've been able to do for almost the last decade. And still, I've evolved and built upon it. But I think those easy foundation blocks that didn't require a lot of money or wasn't hard to reproduce or stay consistent with.
Mm. Well, first of all, I love the grandma test, and it applies to many lines of work. So I'm happy to hear that you employ it as well. Um, but you talked about this idea of consistency of branding, of offering, and I find that really interesting because you're also somebody who is on the forefront of a bunch of trends, and I'm interested in that balance between consistency and experimentation. You now have over 4 million YouTube subscribers. Like, how do you think about what things you want to keep consistent? You mentioned the branding, and what things do you start to experiment with, and how you think about that with maintaining that community?
I think it's just a lot of trial and error. In the beginning, I just started. I mean, I had an idea of those like bare bones things, but as far as staying consistent, it was really just about finding the ways that I could experiment. So, like with the music, I would try a different song. If that didn't work, the great thing about the internet is we have analytics. And so, if something's not working, I can see very quickly. With trends right now, that's very popular. I have never been someone that loves to like fall into the traps of trends where you're kind of taking like a TikTok sound and making the same video as everybody else to it because you can grow quickly. Um, but you're not really creating a community that knows who you are and what you do. And I think the vanity metrics can trap people because they'll see like a video gets over 1 million views. But what are those people going like how are you going to convert those people to whatever you're actually offering? Like is the video that got 1 million views something that is actually building your brand or is it just 1 million people who saw a random video of you doing a sound? So that's something to really think about and not get caught up with trying to stay trendy. But nowadays, like I will take short form content. So I'll still take my 3 minute videos. That's my core. But then TikTok became popular. So I found a way to take those little videos, put clips of that on TikTok, or do little dances that also promote the videos that I'm doing that are long form. I have created a live stream membership thing. So now the 3 minute videos that I was making, some people wanted more than that. And so I made a 30 minute and a 60 minute live stream that I do now that people get to pay for. So I'm not changing my core product. I'm not taking anything away. I'm not charging for what used to be free, but I'm adding something else for people who really want more from that product. I'm also making sure all of my short form content on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Shorts is promoting the live stream content that people are paying for. So I'm just taking clips that already exist, a funny little 15-second moment that can live on itself that seems very native and organic to the platform, but can still convert people. And if they aren't converted, they're still going to watch it and know exactly who I am, what I believe, and what I do. So I just make sure that everything I post online is going to my core values and speaks to who I am and who I want people to think of when they think about the fitness marshal.
Right, that core offering is what you really keep consistent, and that the visualization of it, the brand of it, that is what stays consistent. And then your experimentation, it sounds like, comes in when you're trying to distribute that content, maybe capturing a few different audiences, but all bringing them back to that core offering that
Yeah.
has really established your community.
I also think I was never afraid to fail. Like, I mean,
Mm.
I tried posting strength videos. I tried posting stretch videos because I saw the other, fitness people doing that stuff. And I realized very quickly, oh, that doesn't spark joy inside of me. This feels like a chore. The audience didn't respond well to it. And so I just was like, okay, well, I tried it. That doesn't work. Moving back, leaning back into what works. So I think just not being afraid to fail. I think so many people just don't start or they limit themselves and get so scared and try to stay in a box. But you don't, if something doesn't work, you don't have to keep doing it. I think audiences nowadays are very forgiving, and they appreciate people experimenting. So I think just don't be afraid to try something new. But if something's not working, um, it's not working. You don't have to lean into it.
Yeah, and knowing what works and what that core offering is so important, and that like security and that identification of what that is allows you to be a little bit more experimental, to really understand what might work, that you can augment, whether it is a paid membership, whether it is a new type of short form content. You're augmenting still what that core offering is that you're keeping consistent. So I love that. I want to ask you about partnerships as well, because I would imagine that at this point you have brands and companies reaching out to you all the time looking for some sort of partnership. And I'm curious to hear from you what characteristics you value and prioritize when you're picking a partner.
I just want to make sure that they align with me and my goals. I have the luxury now of not relying on brand deals to um, be my main source of income. Which in the beginning it was, I was very excited to get a brand deal, and I needed that so I could pay my rent. So it's hard in the beginning, but I think now I just want brands who believe in what I believe, who are, I think brands are also very open with their values now, and that speaks. I think that means a lot to me, and so I want to make sure that they are not putting their money in places that I don't agree with or I don't support. I want to make sure that their products are not going to hurt my followers or swindle them out of their money. So I just want to make sure that they really align with who I am, and it can be something that is complimentary and doesn't feel like I'm just doing this because it's a check.
Right. And you've gotten to be a little bit more picky at this point, which is great. And that
Hmm.
alignment with your values, I would imagine, aligns with your audience's values. And that's why those partnerships become successful, is because your audience has the similar values to you, and you're picking that partner based on who you are and who your audience is. Um,
Yeah.
I have one last question for you. And this is kind of a broad question, and I'm going to put you on the spot. But we have, hundreds of different creators in the room today who are getting started, who potentially are, approaching your level. And if you had one piece of advice to leave these creators with today, what would that be in regards to building a community?
I would say just start. Be be scrappy. Put the video out. I don't care if it's a little blurry. I don't care if you don't have the best equipment. If it's not the funniest or whatever it is, you will always be able to talk yourself out of putting something out or taking the next step because it's scary. And for me, I just did it. I kept throwing things at the wall, and eventually something stuck. I would say that I struggled for probably 6 or 7 years trying to find a way to do this and also pay my rent. I started out using music, and everyone told me in the beginning, don't use music. You need to make money. Use royalty free tracks. Use this, use that. And it wasn't who I was, and it wasn't what brought me passion. And so I just crawled and made my way. And now I have record labels paying me to use their songs. I have um, official playlists on Spotify with major record labels. I'm doing partnerships with artists. It's I had to stick to who I was and what I believed in and not change that for anybody. And eventually you will find success with that and find a way to make it work. But don't compromise yourself and who you are for a quick check. So I guess that's two pieces of advice. Don't compromise and be scrappy and put the video out and just keep consistent.
Right. Get started, believe in yourself. Love that advice. I appreciate you being with us today, Caleb. That's all the time we have, but we'll see you a little bit later in our live Q&A. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you, Caleb. You are an absolute legend. We appreciate you sharing your experience with us today. And there were a few things that we discussed that stood out to me. We talked about the idea of consistency, and the way to have a positive brand experience is really through these simple, repeatable, and consistent touch points with fans. And I think as event creators, this makes your life easier when thinking about content. You can create a formula and stick to it. And it makes it easy for attendees to recognize you and to understand what they can expect from you. We also talked about making sure that there is a low barrier to entry. Give your work the grandma test. I do this all the time. I even do this with these events. My grandmother is probably watching right now. Hey, Graham. If your grandmother doesn't understand your email or can't participate in your event, then take a look at what barriers you have and what you might be able to lower for your audience. And lastly, give a core offering. It may take some experimentation to figure out exactly what that is. Like Caleb said, he tried lifting and stretching videos, but they didn't really work. And he found his sweet spot with his 3-minute single song videos. So find what your core offering is and lean into it. Caleb, thank you again. All right, next up is Larissa, aka Larz May. Larz is a digital well-being pioneer who founded Half the Story in 2015 after struggling with her relationship between social media and mental health. She shared her struggle on Instagram and really ignited a digital grassroots movement that gave rise to Half the Story. And since then, Larz has been named a digital wellness activist by Time, Forbes, Refinery29, Good Morning America, and NBC. And she's here to talk to us about building community offline for the next generation. So please join me in welcoming Larissa May. Larz, thank you so much for joining us today. Where are you tuning in from, and who is our special guest?
Well, thank you so much for hosting me. Right now, I'm tuning in from Los Angeles, California, and this is the Half the Story mascot, Poncho. He's also the Chief Cuteness Officer.
I love that. The CCO.
CCO.
I love that. Well, first off, tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words and Half the Story.
So my full name is Larissa. Most people know me as Larz, and I am a digital well-being activist and the founder of Half the Story, which was the first youth-led organization that I started 7 years ago to tackle the mental health issues that our youth are facing in the digital age. So our goal is to empower young people to have agency over their devices and ultimately their lives.
Yeah, and in this digital world where there is so much to consume, there's always something new to read and pay attention to. You have managed to, get recognized by the likes of Good Morning America, Time Magazine, Forbes, and I'm really curious to hear from you. How have you broken through all of that digital noise?
Well, first and foremost, I have used the digital world to forge relationships that translate into the real world. So a lot of the PR pieces and things that we've generated over the last 7 years have been because of the real relationships. Who would have thought that I have developed with these individual editors and producers? The second thing is that we've done a lot of guerrilla marketing as an organization, and we started very grassroots. And the way that we thought about Half the Story was really, we are a grassroots organization, and every person that has Half the Story on their phone or their sleeve is a representative of us. And when you're just getting started, the more people that you can have out in the world working on behalf of you and representing your value or your brand, the more successful you'll be. The third thing that we've done is we really have thought about our organization as a brand and as a business, just like a restaurant would or a hotel. And we ensure that every touch point in the digital world is mirrored in the physical world. So that's why you'll oftentimes see me handing out Half the Story stickers and putting them on walls of the subways in New York, just so that we can be as visible as possible.
Yeah, and I like that idea of thinking like a brand and really articulating what your purpose is and what your why is. I think when you're going out and seeking these different opportunities to be featured or trying to get coverage, inspiring people that you have personal relationships with, that what is my why, what is my purpose for being out there, is so important for getting them to buy into what you're all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's all about trust,
all
especially
about
when it comes to events and getting people to put their precious dollars in your pocket and show up to be there.
Do you do anything special in terms of like collaboration outside of the building relationships in your network that you mentioned, but in terms of like collaborating with other brands or companies, like can you speak to that a little bit and how that may have helped here?
Absolutely. One of the first things that we did as an organization was identify digital influencers and creators that we still lean on to this day so that they could activate their communities online, offline, in the real world with us. So we started a screen-free weekend series that we actually launched as a result of our Eventbrite accelerator last year. And what we did is we partnered with creators online that Gen Zs and teens followed and engaged with, and co-hosted our events with them offline, so that we could create opportunities for influencers to disconnect and authentically connect with their communities, but also for their super fans to meet them in their real life in an unfiltered environment that supported digital well-being, mental health, creativity, and connection. Out of the gate, as an organization, we always tried to identify and build relationships with people that had greater platforms than us, because that's how you grow. And if you have a strong vision and a great cause, most people are willing to lend a hand or their platform.
Right, collaborate up. And you talked a little bit about this balance between the digital world and technology and in-person experience. And I find that that balance really interesting, because obviously you can't ignore the benefits of technology, especially for things like event marketing, and you kind of operate right in that middle ground. So I'd love to get your take on that balance. Like, when do you use and employ technology as you try to create these in-person experiences?
Well, first, I just want to say that the only way people are going to find out about your event now in this modern world we're living in is on technology. And you always have to meet customers where they're at, even if you want to create an offline experience. So for us as an organization, we have really defined how we use technology and have also created really clear boundaries around the role that technology plays in our real life event. So the way that we like to use technology is to, one, build relationships with our customers from the start. So before they even get a ticket, be able to share with them our values, what we stand for. And then the day before the event, make sure that they feel fully prepared, from dress code all the way down to food and beverage, because those little details go a really long way. When you're inviting someone to your event, it's just like you're inviting someone over to your house. And there is an element of hospitality that you have to have for your guests, which often happens through digital touch points. Another thing that we use technology for is research and data. So after every event, we like to, either with our research team, through qual and quant, to really qualitative and quantitative insights, understand not only the impact of our event, because that's the business that we're in as a nonprofit, but also to understand how we can improve, how we can further benefit our guests so that they come back. Because the most important guest that you have is the one that's right in front of you. It's not the one that you don't have that you want to come to a future event. And retention is critical in order to not only build a successful event series, but also a successful business. And I think that in the modern world we live in, technology drives this. We tend to be so focused on acquisition, but the ultimate metric is retention and loyalty. And then the last thing I would say that we use technology for in a thoughtful way is to capture people from an emotional lens and perspective, and to feature stories of youth and stories of individuals who have felt personal transformations through our events, because we're in the business of changing hearts, not minds. Because if you change someone's heart, they're more likely to show up, bring a friend, and hopefully come back again.
Right. It goes back to the inspiration piece that we talked about earlier. And just to recap, what I heard was using technology to educate and to tell stories, but also as a mobilizer and a feedback loop for your customers to the broader business. So yes. I appreciate that insight. All right. So I want us to move. We've built the online community. We've used that digital technology to mobilize them, get them excited about connecting in person. Now I want to talk about that in-person experience. And I'm curious to hear from you, what event tactics do you utilize to really maximize that attendee experience and create that true sense of community?
Well, first and foremost, we have really clear boundaries around technology use, and we invite people to put away their devices so that they can really authentically connect with the people around them. How many times nowadays do you go to concerts and museums and all you see is people there together, but they're really alone because they're on their phone? So we like to set that boundary out of the gate. Of course, we don't force people to do it, but we make them feel like they're a part of something bigger, which is the first point of buy-in. And it's to make sure that you're not there alone, but that you are there in a group and that you do feel part of the greater mission. Mm-hmm. The second thing that we like to do for attendees is create different journeys and opportunities in the experience. I think one of the most uncomfortable things is when you show up and you feel forced to do something that you don't want to. So for us, being in the business of mental well-being, disconnection, and community, we like to have a choose your own adventure, a choose your own journey that allows people to participate in the activities that really connect with them the most. So for some people, that might be somatic healing experiences and binaural beats with DJs. For other people, that might be doodling a stranger without their device so that they can get to know someone. You have to meet people where they're at. And I said that earlier on, and I'll say that from, whether it be in marketing or whether it be when someone walks through the door, because digital well-being is a spectrum, and to us, you can be anywhere on that spectrum. But the most important thing is that you have different entry points so that people feel included. And then the third piece for any event, and I know this sounds very simple because it is offer refreshments. You don't want hangry guests. Have food and beverage. It's a really easy thing to get sponsorship from brands. Most of them have sampling budgets, cans in hands, food in pockets, whatever the brand saying is. Reach out and have your favorite snacks, because people will leave if you don't have food at your event.
Yeah, I think it also relaxes people a little bit. Like even myself with a glass of water right now, I'm like, oh, I can talk to other people and be a little bit more chill. So yeah, those are great suggestions. I have one last question for you, and this one is for the other creators in the room viewing right now who are trying to tap into a Gen Z audience, very similar to the one that you've done such a great job of mobilizing. And I'm curious, like, what would you say is most top of mind for teens right now, especially when it comes to going to events and looking for community?
Well, I think there's two ways to answer this. One is from the social and emotional lens, and other is just from the contextual economic lens of our world. And for young people right now, they're really concerned about finances. They're really concerned about where they're going to fit in the world. And I always say that if you're creating a new event or a new series, that you should budget for free events or sell tickets where it's like buy one and bring a friend, so that you can make your event more accessible and more equitable, which I believe is critical in any sort of arts or mental health and emotional well-being space. So build equity into your baseline so that you can reach more teens or youth or whatever type of audience you want. But when it comes to Gen Zs, there are really three key things that they're looking for. So one is affiliation. The brands that they support or the brands that they show up for or purchase are really reflections of who they are. And so when you walk into a Half the Story event, you're going to walk out wearing Half the Story on your sleeve or on your phone. And we're going to make sure that you're proud of that, because we stand for fighting for a better digital future. So, they want to be a part of ambassadorship in community. And that is a big part of the digital age, because they want to tell their friends online that they did show up to this or they did have this amazing experience. The second thing is they want to have spaces that ask hard questions and are a little bit provocative. Gen Z is living in a world where I think we've moved beyond just being authentic, and now they're kind of living in this shock culture where they want to be provoked. They want to be revved up. They want to be there to answer. They want to be asked the hard questions of, hey, how much is your time worth online to these companies? What is the opportunity cost of spending 30 years on your phone, and what would you rather do with that? Like, you got to get the next generation revved up about something in order for them to engage. And then the last piece is Gen Zs are one of the most connected but disconnected generations in human history. And so what they might not even know that they're looking for, but I know they are because we do the research and the numbers speak louder than anything else, is that they're lonely and they're facing so much isolation. And when they show up to an event, you want to make sure that they actually walk away with real tangible relationships and create spaces for authentic connection in a way that is safe, inspiring, and creative, because that is the power of in-person events. And you want to make sure that they leave, that they remember, and they leave with a friend, because that's what's going to get them to come back.
Right. And it goes back to really articulating your why that you mentioned kind of at the top of this conversation, and using that not only to inspire media and different types of coverage, but to really inspire Gen Z specifically, who are looking for a cause to get behind.
Yeah. And having those brand touch points are critical. And so for us, one way that people know it's a Half the Story event when we pop up, whether it be at the Capitol or at a school or in Washington Square Park, is we always have our giant mural. And this mural asks the question, who are you when the world isn't watching? And when kids come to our events, they always can identify that brand touch point with half the story, and they know this is, this is a unfiltered space, this is a safe space, and you need to create those identifiers so that your people can find you in the wild.
Right. Be recognizable. I really like that. Well, Larz, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us today. I really appreciate your insights, and I know the creators in the room do as well. So looking forward to our live Q&A in just a little while. But thank you so much. And thank you to our CCO for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you again, Larz and Pancho. And just a friendly reminder for us, our speakers are in the chat with you right now, so keep those questions coming. Larz, your work is incredibly inspiring. I appreciate you sharing your experience and advice with us. There are a couple takeaways for me. Number one, collaborate up. Make sure that you're networking and partnering with people and brands who are bigger and better than you. That way, you'll be challenged, you'll learn more, and you'll grow faster. Number two, build equity into your baseline, especially when you're getting started. Use things like buy one, get one free or sliding scale pricing, really out of the gate to bring in a larger group into your events, making it feel very accessible and welcoming. And number three, use the digital world to forge real world relationships. Websites, social media, they're great ways to communicate your values and what you stand for. And in the lead up to an event, you can use it as an information tool to have all of your attendees prepared for the experience. And then after the event, use the digital world to share stories that come out of the in-person gatherings, really inspiring more people to join the next event. Okay, it's time for our final speaker, Myron Chandran. Myron's passion for music and culture led him to creating Afro Soca Love, which is a collective that aims to strengthen the connection between Africa and Caribbean carnival culture through the arts, community, and creativity. After hosting hundreds of events across 3 continents, reaching millions of attendees, he has really developed a knack for creating an undeniable sense of belonging around a shared passion and purpose for uplifting Africans and the people of the African diaspora, as well as anybody outside of these borders who is interested in learning about its culture. So here to share his journey with us today, please join me in welcoming Myron Chandran. Hey, Myron, thank you so much for being with us today. Really excited about our conversation. But first off, how are you doing? Where in the world are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia, enjoying what weather God has given us, which is sunshine and a little bit of breeze.
Yeah, likewise here in San Francisco, California. Before we get in to our conversation, I want to start just to hear a little bit from you about your background and how you founded Afro Soca Love.
Yeah, so my name is Myron. I started out as a DJ, did that for many years, toured with artists, did events all over the place. And as I was doing this, I really hit my niche as an organizer while I was in college at Howard University. As I was doing events, I was really struggling to find ways to like bring together my audience. I would do hip hop shows in one place, and then that crowd wouldn't necessarily come to some of the Caribbean events and also some of the African events I did too. So I really was like an outlier as far as a musician, and I really wanted to find a way to bring all those communities together, especially on campus, because more than just music, we also, as people of the African diaspora, we never really commingled, communicated, and as I was doing this, I kind of realized that there's actually a real issue that I kind of wanted to address, and I wanted to address it in a very fun way and use some of the resources I had, which was being a DJ. And doing that, that's how I actually started to do my event, where it became this cross breed of Black multicultural music, and it really expanded into what we have now, which is also community driven, not just music driven, where we have marketplaces where the same businesses from these cultures and all over the world come together and commune, and the same thing happens with our audience too. They support that, and that's really what it spawned into.
Yeah, and so you clearly had that passion for music and for culture, and I'm curious, how did you go about finding others with that same shared passion and then turn that into a thriving community?
Well, it honestly started with the people around me. So, as I was going to school, as we all do, we find friends, and we also find our own community, people just like us. So I was really heavily involved with like a lot of community organizations in school. So much so that I became a part of an organization called the Caribbean Students Association, where I then became leadership in it. And that was like the pivotal role of me understanding event organization and structure, because with that we had like mentors and student guys that helped us to really understand like how do you actually do a event, how do you have a budget, and then how do you like get and garner the attention of the community. And like I mentioned, like me having that experience being around people from African American descent, and then also people from the Caribbean because I am from the islands, but then also having this huge African influence in how I play music, it was able to, give me an opportunity to make those people my community, and also figure out like how do I make everybody a part of this community I'm building.
Right. So really, identifying that, like connecting to your cultural identity as a place to start building that community. And I also heard like being resourceful, like tapping into some of the maybe in the weeds tactics around how you actually host an event. And I think that you picked up so many different ideas and ways of organizing through your travels as a DJ that you were able to employ in Afro Soca Love.
Yeah, I kind of had a cheat code because I'm here DJing at everybody's event. It's like these are like opportunities for me to see how an event runs, like what makes this event bigger than the other, what makes this better, what might be missing because I'm seeing all these events. So that was really something I was able to leverage, like my resource as being a DJ, and being kind of involved in the community that way.
Yeah, totally. And another thing that you've been really successful at is taking Afro Soca Love not only around the country, but literally around the world. And I would love for you to take us inside that process. Like, how do you identify and decide to take a chance on a new market?
So again, a lot of stuff kind of falls into your lap, but at the same time, it falls down to being resourceful. So, I was living in Washington, D.C., which was where we started. I went to school out there, but I had a friend who lived in Atlanta, and they honestly were, producing their own events there, and I decided to tag along. As I'm tagging along, me being the person that I was, who wanted to do events and wanted to really figure out ways to do more, I ended up, just figuring out what venues I could use. And that was my start, like finding a venue, and from there, I used my marketing tactics I was using in DC. For me, like once you're able to identify who your audience is and who you're serving, like you will find those people every and anywhere. Like the music I play and the people that I met in school, they exist pretty much everywhere. It's figuring out how do you find those people
Mhm.
and how do you engage them in such a way so they can come to you when you come to them. So that was like my big aha moment, was when I was able to figure out like how do I now take this process that I do at home and bring it to other people's homes.
Right. And are there any like specific, you mentioned like using the same marketing tactics that you used in DC when you went to Atlanta.
Mhm.
Are there any specific marketing tactics that you'd be willing to share with us today?
So the secret sauce. So yeah, it's really simple. When I was starting out, and this goes again to being resourceful, and this is probably like the gonna be the mantra of this conversation. I started out, believe it or not, with mixtapes and mixed CDs. I used to go to all my events and bring a mixtape, a mixed CD, burn it in my little multi-burner mixer, and just literally walk with it in hand and say, "Hey, check out my mixtape." Now, this was other people's music, but this was my way of like starting a conversation with people I didn't know. Hey, have you, check this out? If you don't like it, just throw it away. And that was my way, my tactic of really being able to start a conversation so they can see my personality as a person and like me enough to come and see me. And that was how I started. Now, how I got into growing it was me figuring out I could do this online. Like I can have these same conversations online about me, my culture, the community I'm trying to serve, in a very fun and engaging way. And I can sell tickets like that.
Mhm.
And instead of me selling myself, now I can sell this experience. So I used a lot of social media advertising during this period because I didn't have those people in my network yet. And that was really my big aha moment when I was like, I could take this thing anywhere because social media is anywhere. And now I know how to use it. And the same conversation I'm having on the streets while I'm handing out my mixtapes, I can have that conversation online with absolutely anyone I want, whenever I want, you know, however I want, which was really the secret sauce for me.
Yeah, really, it started with you, and then you were able to expand once you established what that experience was going to be. It didn't have to be you every time. You had
Yeah.
this new outlet that you could share with people.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to a lot of stuff's figuring it out, but being resourceful and not letting one idea stifle the other.
Mhm.
So for me, the mixtapes was like I would always say was like my biggest marketing tactic because that's really where I started to realize like I'm engaging people, people are liking what they're getting, and now people want more from me.
Yeah, it almost feels like like an old school tactic, but
Yeah,
it still works. You're offering somebody something that they're going to have on themselves that they'll be constantly reminded, and something as universal as music. I think also helps you tap in and find those people in that have those same interests. If the person you give it to didn't love it, they might give it to somebody who they think really loves it, and that continues to spread, your experience and what you have to offer as well.
yeah. I always tell people, and I kind of learned this during the pandemic, like the the most basic instinctual way of like marketing is the most basic instinctual way of living. Like
Mm.
events still, I don't care what anybody says about digital media, is still the strongest way to connect to your audience. It's the only way you'll get to be in front of them, sit down, touch them, have a conversation, and allow them to deeply get to know who you are in such a short space of time. And there will never be anything that will ever beat that. And how I realized that was actually during the pandemic because when the shows stopped, um, and they started back, it was almost like what I would like to consider prohibition days felt like. People were like, yo, they're doing events over here. Like, let's all go there because we were so emotionally discharged and that void was missing for us that we were willing to do things that we probably wouldn't have done or didn't even think about doing to get that fix, that
Uh,
connective fix that events just cannot replicate. So
yeah, I feel that, and I honestly I couldn't agree more. And
yeah.
let's dive into that experience because I think probably the most important part of developing a community is creating really that intimate experience that makes people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And you do such a great job of it. What is it about your events and what you do at your events that has created such a sense of connection and belonging among the attendees?
Yeah, so I can kind of use this example of me when I was actually in Atlanta, Georgia, and this was where we did our first event outside of market. And during that period of time, I was really able to understand why people are coming out and why people are continuing to come out to our events. And the reason that I realized that I was onto something, but also that there's a formulaic way of like engaging with people was when I get on stage. Like everything will be great and I've gone to a billion and one events doing being a DJ, but what I realize is that once you're able to build the similar connection that essentially we're having, like very one-on-one and intimate but with a large group of people, and master how to that dynamic works through various ways, which I would love to outline as well too. you kind of build a relationship that is beyond just like, hey, put your hands in the air, and like, I feel like this person is a part of my life.
Mm,
Like, I feel like this person is speaking to me. And I think that's the beauty of music, like, especially a great musician, like their ability to connect with that person, listening to them and resonate with them in such a way to where they become quote unquote fans of what this person represents. And for me, that was like the key outline. I didn't want to be that guy, hey, just put your hands in the air. I wanted to actually have a conversation while we're having fun,
mm,
whether it be about how do we connect the African diaspora, whether it be about some of the issues that we're facing in our community, and finding a fun and enjoyable way for people to have that conversation, but also to build on that concept of community. And I had many ways of doing that, and a big thing that I always tell people to figure out while they're at events is figuring out how to do icebreakers,
mm.
how to break the ice with people. And that was something I really started to navigate and leverage during these events.
And what can you tell us, another secret sauce question? Can
Yeah.
you tell us what some of those icebreakers are that you use that you found to be successful?
Yeah, so as I was in school, actually, I used to every Sunday I would, actually go to the church service they had at Howard University. It was amazing. Music was amazing. They always had pastors come from all over the world, but I really, after a while, after going every Sunday, I started to liken myself as a pastor because as I go, the music would play and it would be like so into everything happening because of the feeling we're getting, and then the pastor will come and just say something that might resonate with us, and we would then we would feel so I would feel so connected to this person and this message, like for me. So that was like a big thing for me. A big icebreaker is actually like using music, but also using my communication skills to break the ice with people. So one example would be, as I'm on stage, I'll tell people literally to go and find somebody you don't know and introduce yourself. Sounds very simple, but you can envision some events possibly you've been to in the past, maybe when you're younger, maybe even go to now, where you might go to an event with your friends and not talk to anybody else there. Like the event is really with your friends, and once you can break the ice and kind of lead people to navigate how do you actually function at this event, like you're really in control of like, where you can take the event now. Because once they have a great experience with your leadership, now they actually just listen to whatever you got to say and whatever you want to do.
Right.
Another example too I have is we do a marketplace, a black owned marketplace during the daytime, and what I always do is, and this is a bit deeper, but this is another icebreaker. I always bring the children on stage. I
Hmm.
tell the children to come on stage. Some are very reluctant, some are super excited to be on stage, which is a given. Everyone has different personalities, but I do it for many reasons. Once the kids come on stage, then I ask the vendors to donate some of their products for the children.
Hmm.
So it's a twofold thing. You donate your products, I shout out your business on stage. It's a win-win situation. But then also the kids are super excited and happy to you know, be gifted, but also to be seen, be celebrated. People show up with their cameras like, oh, that's so cute. And this for me, this icebreaker does so many things, has so many layers to it. So what that for me does is that one allows some of the kids who might be afraid to have conversations and might not be as outgoing to kind of have this normalized experience of being on stage and in front of a crowd and also being celebrated at
Mhm.
a very early age. So for me, that's where I'm able to leverage this icebreaker, but also now for the vendors, now they're feeling represented during this icebreaker because they feel like they're giving back to the kids, one, and then two, they know that they're also being celebrated because we're shouting their business out for
Mhm.
doing this good deed for the children. So it's really a win-win. But then the deeper meaning behind this icebreaker is for me is, you might not see it now, but I was a very shy child, like never spoke, never said anything, was really out the way, very timid, and I still have that introverted way about me. But had I not had this opportunity to be on so many stages, I mightn't have been able to find my voice.
Right.
So for me, it's a deeper meaning with kids, because I want children to have an opportunity where this experience of like being on a stage and being in front of people is very much normalized from an early age.
Right.
And what that for me does, this icebreaker really does, is it like kind of imprints like this is normal, this is okay, and you can speak, like you can dance on stage. And this where I start to realize this icebreaker is really good is that when the kids will come to me the next marketplace, and they'll be like, when can we go on stage now? So to see the children's attitude change towards like that experience, for me is like, I'll never get tired of
And
it. So icebreakers are so important.
I love that, and I think that it could be applied like for the event creators in the room who may not have children at their events necessarily. You can find ways to do that, not just with children. I think that any time that you can get the audience to be participants in the event, not just viewers, but be participants in a number of different ways, that experience gets elevated and you remember it so much more, and you feel more connected to you as the event host, but also it helps create connections with the people around you. So I really love that, Myron. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and giving us those secret sauce tips. I'm really looking forward to our live Q&A in a little bit, but I appreciate you being here with us. Thank you so much, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I appreciate everybody listening, and I hope everybody takes something away from it and it benefits whatever they're doing in their events and experiences.
Thank you, Myron. I love how creative you are with your approach to engaging your audience, and that was one of the main takeaways for me. And it's kind of more of a challenge to think about all the ways that you can engage your audience, whether it's merch or mobilizing for a cause. We should all think about how we keep our community top of mind for attendees. Myron also emphasized that your live events are your strongest touch point with your community and really do need to be prioritized. It truly is where that real connection happens, and it's what people will be talking about that will spread the word about your events. And as always, do not forget to capture content from those live events so that you can spread that experience even further than the folks who attended. And probably my favorite part of the conversation was Myron's focus on creating the one-to-one relationships with your crowd. Really be the human icebreaker, lead by example, and give people a reason why they would never forget your event. So let's give it up for Myron one last time. And I would like to thank all of our speakers and bring them onto our virtual stage so we can ask them some of your questions. So let's welcome them. Start dropping your questions in the chat. And while everyone is getting settled, just a quick plug for our post-event survey. Really appreciate your feedback. So head over to that survey tab before you head out. Hello, everyone. How are we doing today?
Wonderful.
Woo! I finally changed my shirt.
I am the only one who didn't change my shirt, and yeah.
I'm going to jump right into it and give the people what they want. I have our first question here from Katie Moritz.
Don't ask me why I'm in church clothes. I wasn't at church. Just so happened to be here like this.
You look great. I love it. All right, our first question. It's a tactical one. What's the best way to work with partners and collaborators and stakeholders, specifically around like what content you put in your Eventbrite listing? Like, I know that I think you all have worked with partners. Larz, you mentioned some like food and beverage partners. Caleb, you mentioned some music label partners, and maybe your reference can be more about like the YouTube listing. But how do you work with partners specifically around what you include in either the event or the YouTube listing for those partners? And Larz, I'll start with you if that's okay.
Yeah. So typically when I go out to partners, and this is a great practice if you're starting an event series, one, because it'll make you look
Oh no, I think we lost Larz, and I think we lost Myron. So Caleb, it's me and you for now. Did you get that question? You want me to repeat it for you, or you got it?
Yeah. So I mean, I've worked with partners
Pro,
a few different
well,
ways.
not...
All right.
Well, all right. I've worked with them a few different ways. Yeah. So when it's for YouTube, again, it's just very synergistic, and it has to make sense. So I don't often, usually partners are not too particular about making themselves too known, whether that be like in the event or on YouTube. Like they really allow me to, I think, be more authentic and organic with it. It doesn't have to be overly saturated with the brand. It just has to be like a little shout out. So like in our tour, for example, we worked with Lyft. And so instead of making it like the fitness marshal with Lyft, it was, hey, we're going to use Lyft to get you to this event. So we sent out Lyft codes to our followers. So it sounded, or for them, it was more like, oh, I'm getting something from this experience. This partner's adding value to what I'm getting out of it, as opposed to it seeming like, oh, this person's just paying for them to put this event on.
Gotcha. So it's actually more beneficial for the partner if you're able to do it in your authentic way. It'll come across better for the audience. They'll be a little bit more receptive to that partnership rather than feeling like it's an advertisement, they're getting sold something. Like this is a legitimate value add to their experience.
Yeah, it's a bonus.
Totally. There was actually a specific question about partnering with Uber and Lyft, and you kind of beat me to it. So this one comes from Teresa, and it's specific around like offering complimentary drinks at events, but ensuring guests make it home safe. Curious if you can speak to like how you started that partnership with Lyft. Did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? Kind of like what was the beginning of those conversations?
So my manager, actually, who's my fiance, wrote a cold email to Lyft. We're very scrappy with it. So like in the beginning, when you don't have many connections, which we didn't when we worked with Lyft, he emailed everyone he could find like that worked at Lyft and just like made up an email address at lyft.com. And eventually one got through. They found our social media and loved it. And so we just really pitched the tour as something like, okay, people are coming to this event and they're leaving. They're going to probably go out and drink after. Some of the moms will drink before they come to my dance fitness events. That's their prerogative. But it was really organic. And so it was easy for Lyft because they just had to provide codes to get to and from the event. They wanted us to post photos of us getting in our lifts on our way to the show. So it was all very easy. It got people excited who were already coming to our shows, and it gave them a real tangible takeaway like, oh, I get to have a lift after this. And it introduced people, I think, to rideshare who might not have used rideshare before.
Right. That's scrappiness. It works. You kind of gotta, I mean, I say it a bunch. It's like, you gotta knock. Hello, Larz. I'm glad to have you back.
We're dealing with tech distress, okay?
Yes. This is normal event, and I know everybody in the audience is empathizing with us today. Larz, I'll ask you the same question that I asked Caleb to start, because I know you just got started on answering it before you cut out. But in your work with collaborators and stakeholders on how you include content in either an Eventbrite listing or any sort of listing, like how do you go about doing that? What has your experience been with including content from partners in event listings?
Well, first things first, the most important thing you can do when you're engaging someone financially is to have clear expectations set up front. So what I typically like to do is offer different tiered levels of sponsorship over multiple events so that one, brands are getting more touch points with their consumers, which is how you actually build a brand and build that awareness. But also two, so that I can really hold the line with these partners, because if you do not have a contract or have those things set up out of the gate, it's likely that there's going to be scope creep, which is going to make everything harder for you, but even more so harder to maintain that relationship and retain that client, which is really what these sponsors are. So I typically like to give them a logo within the Eventbrite and then also have some sort of special announcement or partnership on our social media so that we can actually show why we partnered with them instead of just putting a label on our page. Because any good brand should be really intentional about the brand values of the partners that you bring in, and your community should know that as well.
Right. And it's deeper than just like slapping a logo on. It's about finding ways to partner that really add value, like Caleb talked about with Lyft, that worked really well. Myron, you're back with us as well. We finally got the internet
I'm
issues
here.
worked out.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I got our next question. I'm going to ask this to all of you because it comes from Vinod Samuel, who is asking about your core values. He's curious what your core values are and also what the biggest struggle that you have had to overcome. And Myron, since we just got you back, I'm going to start with you. What are your core values for Afro Soca Love, and what was the biggest struggle that you've had to overcome?
It's a great question, and I'd love to answer wholeheartedly. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. As you know, this event is happening online. I'm breezing through the chat, and I'm seeing a lot of people ask about sponsorship and support, and how do I get people to join forces with me and I. And I think the greatest core value you can have is not to be so numerically fixated on things. Right. I think when people think about events, they're like, how many people can I get there? I want my event to be big. Like, I want it to have a lot of people. I want to make a lot of money. You know, that's the big thing. And when they think of that, they think of sponsorships and they think of all these great things, which are amazing and important and valuable. And it's going to be an integral part of you growing your business. But the most valuable thing you can do at your event is listen. Just listen to the people in front of you. They're telling you everything they want to. Just listen. Humble yourself as an organizer and just listen. And as you listen, what will happen is you'll begin to serve. And while you serve, you'll realize that more people are coming, more people are interested, because you know what? You're giving people what they want. And I learned this lesson the hard way because I became so numerically fixated on numbers. I wanted to make sales. I started getting sponsors. I started touring. I started going from one destination, which might be 50 miles, and the next destination is 1,000, 3,000, 4,000. I'm in a different continent. And I really had to realize that as I'm growing, and I started to realize I'm losing focus and I'm also losing my crowd. You know, so the most important thing is just listen, like truly listen to the people in front of you. They're here at your event for a reason, but don't forget why. They came because you're serving them, right? So
yeah, that's a great reminder, Myron. Always listen. And Larz, you kind of mentioned it during our call as well. Like retention, the customer in front of you is the most important one that you have. Don't fixate so much on acquisition and getting new people in the door. Focus on keeping the people that you already have in the door coming back, because they'll go out and start doing your marketing for you. So Myron, I appreciate that. Caleb, I'm going to ask you next. What are your core values, if you're willing to share those with us, and what's one of the biggest struggles that you've had to overcome?
I mean, my core values are making sure everyone who watches my content feels like they can be a part of it and that they have a seat at the table too. I never want to alienate people. And I think it's so easy when you're on, especially social media, trying to chase trends and trying to be the coolest and the best and the most interesting, that at least with me, the more I try to do that, the more people feel like there's a separation and they can't also join in. And so I use like live events really as a bar to say, this is how I want people to feel when they watch my content, when they come in person. I want to create a feeling that makes people feel like we're all a family. We can all do this. I might be like a mom who's never danced in my life, who lives in Indiana, but I can show up to this show and I can dance with these people on stage and pretend to be a pop star and feel sexy and feel empowered. And I want to help translate that feeling to people. So I think my core value is really just making sure I'm always, whatever I'm doing, it's so that other people can also feel like they can be a part of it as well. And I think the biggest challenge has been going from in-person events and seeing them and getting the one-to-one, like immediate feedback, and then doing things online where you don't get the immediate feedback. You just get random people commenting. You get people who would never show up to your event in the first place, commenting on your video and making you feel a certain type of way about what you're creating. And so it's just staying true to who you are and remembering the people who are coming to your events and using that as the bar for what kind of content I'm creating online.
Right. No, I love and appreciate that. Larz, are you with us?
I'm experiencing tech distress. But my core values, it really, I try to refresh them every quarter with our team. And right now, I would say the ones that are sticking are play, creativity, and integrity. I think at every event we want, even though we are in the mental health space and we are in the business of ending loneliness due to the digital world, play is such an important component to get people to keep coming back, because you want to take them out of their element, their feelings, the emotions that they had when they walked in, and completely transform them from head to heart.
Love that. All right, gonna jump to our next question. This one's a little bit about marketing. I think you all have some experience here, but there were two questions around this. One comes from, if I just get this right, comes from Dana, and another one comes from David Good. It's around any ideas for free ways to market your events. David is hosting free Zoom events, really trying to help people with loneliness and social isolation. And Dana's working with a limited budget. So Larz, I'll go back to you quickly. Just any free or really cheap marketing tactics that you usually use?
Oh yeah, I mean we were grassroots. Our first grant was $250 7 years ago, so I was used to figuring out how to market on a budget, and I learned a lot in the process. So there's a couple of great tools that can help support you in this mission. One is called Rocket Reach, and it's a website that you can sign up for and get pretty much anyone's email in the world that you want, from an editor of a magazine to the head of a brand. And so what you want to do is find all the editors who have access to the event write-ups and submit your event and see if they'll write about it. There are always event roundups in what was, I think it was New York Magazine or New York Now. Just find your local communities and try to market them there. I think the second most important thing you can do is find creators who are allies and supporters of your work. As an organization, we partner with Gen Z creators to help co-host our activations, because it takes a lot of the burden off of me and my team, honestly, from a marketing perspective. So we can always focus on retaining our core guests and then lean on our creators to bring in new individuals into our community and become ambassadors of that movement, or the flames of the experience that we're trying to create. Because you should think of every single person that attends your event or whatever you're creating online or offline as.
Oh no, we were doing so well. All right, Caleb, I'll go to you. Free or really cheap marketing tactics that you've used?
So we've actually never paid for marketing for our events, for our activewear, anything. We've just relied on organic reach and creating content that people really love and then want to naturally find more about. So for our events, we also emails, they seem dead, but they are such a good way to get people to know about your event. So whenever we have had like forums online, or have had people email us for whatever reasons, we save all of those. And I think we used to use MailChimp. I think we use something else now. But sending out email blasts to people who are already engaged in your content and what you're doing is the best way to, I think, get the word out. But creating short form video is so powerful. If you create a short 15-second video and you can convey to people what you're offering, show them something that they want to experience, that is more powerful than paying for an ad, forcing something in someone's face, doing a sponsored post. Like, organic content is so, so powerful. And I think TikTok and Facebook Reels and YouTube Shorts are some of the most powerful free tools we have right now, and they should not be underestimated.
Yeah, I completely agree. And everyone, if you haven't seen Caleb's content, go check it out. You will absolutely learn something from it. Myron, I'll go to you to close us out. Free or really cheap marketing tactics that you've used, whether in the States or even around the globe.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, as a DJ, mixtapes is what I used, but really the resource was other people's events. Go to other people's events, see what they're doing. One, you can learn a lot, learn some of their tactics, but also these people coming to the events are what? Event goers, so they're the easiest way to just kind of get them flowing, get your ideas buzzing. You know, I was very old school. You go outside an event and have your flyers and you say, "Hey, come to my event." It sounds very, very old and dusty, but it works. I'm telling you right now, you show up with a smile on your face and say, "Hey, how you doing?" People will be so surprised because a lot of people go to events and they only hang out with people they know. So when you go out and put yourself out there, yeah, you might look stupid a few times, but after a while, you start honing in on it. You'll be so confident. They're gonna be like, "Who is this person?" Like, every time I come to this event, I see him talking about whatever. Like, if not, they're gonna remember you, and the memory of you, once your stuff blows up, will bring them back to you. And for the most part, the people that early adopt your event, when you do stuff like that, they're gonna be like, "I remember you when you was outside the event talking about your event, man. Like, that's so crazy. Look at it now." And I get that all the time, but you know what? They remember you. So I always say go to other people's event and just talk your stuff, talk how you talk, and be yourself, be unapologetic about it, and communicate. It's an event. It's all about socializing.
Yeah. Yeah. Put in that work and be out there in those spaces that you're trying to reach. Like, put yourself out there as well. And it's about a little bit being scrappy. Like, Caleb, it reminds me of what you said about doing the emails. It's like, literally, you just got to put in that work. You got to, either you're online, like finding those emails, or you're going to other events and handing out flyers. Any way that you can put in work to go out and reach people, especially when you get started, like, don't be afraid to really take that time and do that. It'll pay off in the future. That's all the time we have today. I want to thank you both for hanging with us through some technical difficulties. Everybody, let's send our speakers off with some love as they head out. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Everybody go give them a follow on socials, and yeah, you'll be able to stay in the loop on their latest and greatest. You both, as well as Larz, have left us with some really valuable takeaways on how we build a loyal community. And we're going to do a full recap of today's conversation and the key takeaways for all of you in the audience. So keep an eye out on your inbox, as well as on Eventbrite's blog, for access to the recordings from today's conversations, as well as summaries from our editors. So thank you, everybody in the audience, for being with us today, for engaging with us in the chat and riding through some technical difficulties. Again, just a friendly reminder, jump to that survey tab right below me. We really appreciate your feedback. We want to keep improving these to make them more useful for you. And we have another Reconvene session coming up on June 8th. This one's going to be all about how to sell out your events. So we're going to be back with more creators who consistently sell out events. They're going to share their marketing tactics for maximizing ticket sales. So registration is open. You can go grab your spot today. And once again, if you plan on sharing anything on social media, use that hashtag Reconvene. We'll spread the love on Eventbrite socials. And if you have any questions relating to the Eventbrite platform, check out our help center. It'll have all of the answers to your technical needs. And the best way to stay in touch and in the loop on all of our community programming, go follow Eventbrite's organizer profile on Eventbrite, as well as at Eventbrite Organizers on Instagram and Facebook. We'd love to keep the conversation going. But for now, that's all we have today, and we'll see you next time.